I know. 15. Okay, on page 626, we're going to go through section 11.5. 11.5's got a couple different things in there we got to go through, but it's fairly simple. A couple things that they talk about, first of all, is descriptive statistics, which basically means it involves the organization, summarization, and display of your data. So far you've been using that. Inferential statistics involves using a sample to draw conclusions about your population. So for instance, things like they used to say for Trident commercials, 4 out of 5 dentists approve of chewing that kind of gum. Did they survey every dentist? Probably not. Probably a sample. Okay, and then they made that statement. Okay, so just so that you guys know, we're going to be looking at more inferential instead of descriptive, what you guys have been doing. So the first type of thing that they're going to do is they're going to say estimate the population mean. That's this thing here. That's what they talk about. And what that means is population mean. What does it mean? What does the mean mean? Average, right? So one of the ways to calculate that is by taking this divided by n. What does that symbol mean again, the E? Sigma, which stands for what? What is it doing? Not just there. What does it mean? What does sigma do? Huh? What? You add the numbers. That's all it means. Summation, add. And we just took a test on it not too long ago. Hopefully you guys do well in your final. Okay, so anyway, on that particular thing, it means to add all your numbers together. Then the n stands for how many numbers that you have. So when you're finding the mean, if I were to take all your test scores, for instance, on the last test, I would add them together, divide by how many people are in the room. That would be the population mean. Okay? So when they ask you to do that, I don't want to spend too much time on that one because you guys know how to find the mean. How long have you been finding the mean or the average of numbers?
Sixth grade.
Since like grade school, right? So as far as that goes, that's what they're going to do is they're going to give you a population or give you a sample, add them together, divide by how many you got. That's your mean. Okay? Then after that, they're going to have you look at some things, and based on the surveys, what's going to happen. This is the inferential part. And if you look on page 627, it talks about asking you a question, and it's going to give you a table or give you a chart, and it says, based on the results of the first 2 surveys, do you think candidate A will win the election? Yes or no? The first 2 parts of the survey, they were at 40% and at 33.3%. Do you think that person's going to win the election if that's how many percent of the vote said yes? No, because they need at least 50. But after the whole candidate or after the whole sample size gets bigger, which then by the end of the table, the sample size is up to 200 people, now it's at roughly 59% of the vote. Do you think they'll win then? Yes. Basically what that means is that if you base stuff on smaller data size, you're probably not going to be as accurate. So the more you do, the more accurate you're going to be. So again, for something like that, they're going to give you a table and they're going to ask you to tell me what you think. Okay? There isn't a formula for it. There's nothing to do with that. It's just look at the data and tell me what you think should happen. Okay? Then, the last part that's in there, it's talking about margin of error. A margin of error has a formula. in order for you to put or publish statistics, you basically have to state, usually at the bottom, that you're going to be within this percent of the data. Okay, so if you make a statement about something, you need to be within that margin of error in order for it to be valid. Okay, so for this particular thing, N stands for the population size. That's what the N stands for. How many people you had. Okay, so they got something like this. In a survey of 2,048 people in the United States, 55% said that television is their main source of news. What's the margin of error for the survey? So for that particular thing, the margin of error for the survey, because they surveyed 2,048 people, this is where your calculator comes in, and you take 1 divided by the square root of 2,048. 0.022, or plus or minus 2.2%. Because I just moved it 2 places over. That's all I did. Yes, because you could be above it or you could be below it. Okay? Now the second half of that is going to say, find the interval of which the people surveyed said television is their main source of news. So here's how you do that. In the picture, it gave us that 55% said TV. So here's how you get the interval. You add 2.2%. That'd be the top end. And if you add 2.2 to get the top end, how do you get the bottom end? Right. 55 minus 2.2. So what was 55 minus 2.2? $52.8 to what's 55 plus 2.2? 57.2. So when we survey people, it should be somewhere in that ballpark range of people saying that TV is their main source of news. Okay. As far as finding the interval, once you find the margin of error, then you add the percent or you subtract the percent. That's it. There's no secret catch. There's nothing else on there. That is it for margin of error and finding the intervals. I promise. Okay, because you always think that there's going to be a catch, but there isn't. This is it. So, it's going to say something like this. In a survey of 1,020 U.S. adults, 41% said their top priority for saving is retirement. What's the margin of error? Give the interval that is likely to contain the exact percent of all U.S. whose top priority is saving for retirement. So again, you take plus or minus 1 over the amount of people that you surveyed, and then you add that to 41% and subtract it to 41%, and that gives you your interval. Done. What do you think? Again, the first part is just going to ask you to estimate the population mean, which means you add them together and divide by how many pieces of data you have. That's the population mean. Then after that, they're going to ask you to come up with, or based on the results, what do you think should happen? Yes or no? Should they be hired, fired, whatever it's asking you to do. Then the last half of it's going to say find the margin of error, or determine the margin of error, and then give me the intervals which that spot should hit. What do you think? Not too bad? So on page 630 to 631. 3 through 5. 7 and 8. Not 78. And 12 to 18 evens.